the Spot Track Podcast, talking sports contracts, the salary cap, and business of sports.
Today's edition of the Spot Track Podcast is presented by Authentic Audio Productions. Visit AuthenticAudioPro.com today and learn more about this phenomenal company helping you, your business, your brand step up to the next level. There's plenty of competition out there. You need quality audio, consistent audio, and fresh, quick moving content, right? Nothing drawn out, nothing lethargic. These guys are writing the content for you as needed, using professional tools, professional systems, professional applications, and getting this job done from A to Z. Visit AuthenticAudioPro.com. My name is Mike Ginnitti. It is Sunday, August 25th. There's a preseason Sunday night football game on right now that I am ignoring. However, we're going to start off the top here with some NFL because we are in the heat of roster cuts. There's only one now. I posted the NFL kind of notable upcoming schedule last week on X and Threads at Spot Trek on both. If you don't follow it just yet, the next big item, ticket item in the NFL is the roster cut down to 53 men this Tuesday, August 27th. It used to be set up into a couple of different cuts, which made things a little bit complicated and convoluted because you had cuts and then waiver claims and all sorts of things happening. And then those guys got cut again and waiver claimed, and you can understand. Now it's one, it's a little cleaner, but it means we've got teams going from 90 to 53 rather rapidly by Tuesday, 8:27, 4 p.m. Eastern. Then we'll have one full day with those waiver claims, 4 p.m. Eastern, Wednesday, for the final cut waivers. And then we'll start diving into some practice squads. Another post that I've recently made, which is for 2024, same rules as last year, 16 player max. It can be a mix of guys with 0 to 2 accrued years. You can have a max of 10 of those, or unlimited accrued time in the league. So, you know, you can bring back Tom Brady and put him on a practice squad if he agrees to it. But a mix of 10, max 10, max 6 with those for a total of 16 players. All of it's going to count against the cap once the season starts. The salaries range from about $17,000 up to about $384,000 based on your experience and the deal you kind of pull, right? Agents aren't just working for active roster spots here. They are working for practice squad spots as well, because as we laid out, I think last week, yes, you've got the UFL. Yes, you've got some other competition and quite frankly, college football, right? But this is still, for all intents and purposes, this is still the best value. A, you're attached to an NFL team. You are one injury away from being called up, or maybe even, you know, on the bubble for those extra 2 roster spots on game day. Remember, you can go from 53 to 55 on game day. So making $13,000 a week, sitting here on this practice squad, getting your butt kicked, may not be the best job in America, but in terms of attaching yourself directly to an NFL squad, I do think this is still a pretty darn good path to go. Will this have to be adjusted slightly in the next iteration of the CBA? Maybe, you know, maybe you'll see some guys bounce around a little bit and devalue this practice squad. But for now, it is what it is. It's going to count to, you know, around 300,000 and change. And we'll see what happens with some of these organizations that are trying to figure out some last minute cuts, try to sneak some guys through waivers so they can P-squad them for at least a couple of weeks. But this is an ever-moving pendulum, the in-season of the NFL. If you think free agency and things like that get wild, the week-to-week minutia of up and down and left and right that happens with these rosters is really like no other sport, because you can have massive extensions, big-time trades, and then just dozens and dozens of moves up and down. So it's not something I dislike, but it's an awful lot to keep up with. So if you think that I'm just sitting around watching football, that's unfortunately not what comes with this part of this job. You know what I mean? There's a lot of jobs that require sitting on a couch and watching 80 hours of football a week. That's kind of the back burner process for what we do. So it's why we don't sit here in front of a microphone and analyze schemes and formations, although I would love to do that. But the finances really kick in starting today, starting this weekend, and now really through early February before the waiver period opens up again. And then all hell breaks loose. One more, I'd say 2 more kind of important dates to get to here without getting too far down the road. September 3rd, that Tuesday before the Thursday night opener, that's when we're going to flip the switch over to the full salary cap. So for now, it's top 51 still. And, legally binding 4 p.m. ET, all teams have to be cap compliant with top 51 right through 9-3. At that point in time, everything flips over and everything is included. The practice squad, all the reserve lists, everything on the active roster, pretty much anything anywhere that isn't suspension based is going to count. And in some cases, even the proration for suspensions and players that haven't reported and things like that will count toward the cap. So it opens up pretty quickly. And if you think your team, for instance, my local team here, Buffalo, there's a lot going out that there's $9 million to work with. It's fine. Technically speaking, on the top 51, that exists, but in 72 hours or so here, right? Or a week and a half or so here, they're going to be right up against the total allocation. They're, even with 9 roster cuts today, Buffalo's about minus 18 on the total cap. So it's not that it's fool's gold. It is what it is. The top 51 cap is the offseason operating cap. But as you approach week 1, and we are certainly there, it's really time to start looking at the big picture and where everything's going to come into play. So if you think you're going to sneak in like a savvy veteran 1 year, $7 million contract at this point in time, it's just not pliable, because there are a lot of moving parts that are going to happen. Waiver claims, maybe even some late trades that come in as rosters really truly try to finalize and prepare for week 1. And of course, injuries always throw wrenches into some people's plan A's at this time of year as well. And the other date is that the trade deadline for 2024 has been set at November 5th. So we generally kind of tease that as a Halloween deadline. It's a little bit later this year. I think that's how the calendar ended up working out. But I do think there was a push to move it back one entire week with the 18-week roster, which is soon to be 19-week, in my opinion, maybe even as soon as next year. And then we'll see what happens with bye weeks and trade deadlines and all that. But next Tuesday, we're going to, from a Spot Trek standpoint, take on full salary cap compliancy. And 11/5 is the official hard 4 p.m. Eastern trade deadline. So players like Daniel Jones and Brandon Ayuk and maybe Jamar Chase. I'm spitballing for no reason. Let's get into some of these names, though. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole just yet, because there's really no new news on Dak and Jamar and CD and Brandon. We're just kind of waiting in the wings on that one. Again, we're in roster construction, roster management mode here for the most part. We did wake up to some sort of trade block scenario with Ernest Jones out in Los Angeles. That's a bona fide starting inside linebacker, off-ball linebacker. In the final year of his rookie contract, he got proven performance bonus up to $3.1 million for a base salary. So he's a little bit expensive, but the Rams are operating with quite a lot of wiggle room here, rosters from a roster standpoint. Minus 11 on the total cap, by the way. So that's the difference. But you can tell that this is a team that knows exactly what they want to be, not just this year, but probably through 2025. They've made a lot of moves that are not just about the immediacy. And this seems to be another one. They're dangling them out there early. They want to see what other rosters are thinking about as they make their final cuts. And if you can get some kind of mid-round pick for this guy, he's a 100+ tackle player. Last year, I think he had 5 sacks and a forced fumble, and he's got a couple of interceptions in his career. He's kind of a 5-tool off-ball linebacker, not to the degree of like a Fred Warner yet, but he may be on that warpath. And I think the Rams are already looking out the room saying, look, this guy is going to need a near top of the market off-ball linebacker contract, and we are simply not in that sort of window. We are still playing with a Matthew Stafford quarterback contract that we just tweaked. We've still got Cooper Kupp at least for one more guaranteed season. And we've still got some Aaron Donald dead cap to live with through 2025 as well. So they're probably counting their chickens here a little bit, understanding that for the most part, this roster has to be value-based. And quite frankly, there are a lot of teams, and I'm not putting words in their mouth. This is me saying, stating this out loud. I think there are a lot of teams that are simply not going to go big on this position. I think this is a position they believe they can flip over every 3 to 4 years from a draft perspective, or even a value free agent perspective. And we've sort of seen this over the past couple of years. Now we've got Tremaine Edmonds and Roquan Smith with monster contracts. We've got Fred Warner with a deservedly monster contract. But a player last year in free agency, Patrick Queen, who I thought was going to be at least in the conversation with those names, financially speaking, took a bit of a haircut and a pay cut to join Pittsburgh and kind of align with their contract structure. So we've seen this more and more, that there are certain positions where I think teams just have their foot down, saying we're not going to reach here because we can either patch together through depth, or it's becoming easier and easier to find lightning in a bottle in the draft, knowing that most of the college defenses kind of run themselves through this position. And yet here in the NFL, it's important as hell, but it's devalued. And unfortunately, there's a few positions, right? Safety, running back, to some degree, tight end. Hell, even the cornerback market hasn't really exploded over the past couple of years. It's flatlined. So there's always a need to kind of push things a little bit. And I think that the Rams are simply saying, we want to do right by this guy a little bit. We want him to get his payday. It ain't going to be here. So let's start the process of getting something back for him early, maybe earlier than most teams would do something like this, because you don't want to fracture the locker room before week one. But I understand it. So that's the deal. It's about $3.1 million, non-guaranteed. That would move to a new team. Minimal dead cap, just the final year of his signing bonus sticking back. So you're going to free up that $3.1 million if you can move him right now. And like I said, this is a player. This is a starting caliber player. So you're looking at least a mid-round, probably conditional draft pick coming back. Again, if that's something that the Rams feel they can replace immediately in 2024, you do that and you get the draft pick now and think about using that draft pick to probably replace him next year, and so on and so on. Like I said, most of the other NFL storylines have sort of just been hanging out there for one reason or another. Andrew Brandt's famous deadlines spur action is going to come into play here, because we are coming down to the deadline, whether that's the cap deadline, whether that's the week one deadline, whether it's a penciled in deadline that the agents and teams have worked out that said we're not going to negotiate after said date. I told you, if I'm Dak Prescott, that is next Tuesday for me. If I'm his agent, I'm saying we are done talking after next Tuesday. I'm not going to screw around with my preparation for week one, and I'm not going to be doing this week in and week out, but we'll see. There's plenty of big fish that need a contract out there, and we saw a few more, by the way, hit in terms of Creed Humphrey, the Patrick Mahomes center out in Kansas City, who reset the center market pretty much in every capacity, though I don't have the full details on that just yet. And then we talked about it last Thursday, AJ Terrell got a nice hefty 4-year, $81 million contract with about half fully guaranteed at signing with the Falcons, who have been uber aggressive, even late here down the stretch, to revamp that defense and keep it together for a couple more seasons. All right, the crux of today. I spent way too much time, but I love doing it. Taking a stab at the upcoming Major League Baseball free agency period, which is really just a couple of months away here. We're down to the final 30 games or so to the regular season. Playoffs will move quickly after that. And then, come on Halloweenish, every team's going to be thinking about this crop, and it's a decent crop. There's obviously some positions that are deeper than others. There's some positions that I think we can just throw completely out the window. Here's what I've done. It's now live on Spotrac.com. I have given valuations to every single available free agent. So not just the unrestricted free agents, right? The players that, as long as they don't get an extension, are going to hit the open market December 1st, 2nd, or 3rd. But I've also valued players that have club options, players that have player options, players that have opt-outs available, players that have mutual options. And I've given thoughts on every single one. So I'm not giving you every free agent in this piece that's probably going to turn around and sign a minimum contract. But if they're of note, I've got 7 starting pitchers. I've got 5 relievers. And then I've got 5 more of each with option decisions. And I give you my thoughts on the finances, what they're worth, and also what I think could go down in terms of those option decisions over the next couple of weeks. So I went position by position all the way down through the DHs. There's a greatest hits, as you've probably seen on some other websites already, right? The top free agents out there. I'll leave you with this. When it's all said and done, and I did probably 4 dozen market valuations for this upcoming winter, and there's plenty more to get to. And by the way, these are going to change and evolve over the next 6 weeks because the stats have changed and evolved. So these are the top 5 that have been spurned out of our algorithm Major League Baseball contract predictor. No surprise here, especially today, having watched the Yankees go back to back to back. Juan Soto is far and away this winter's top free agent, and it's not even close. When this happened a couple of months ago, I think it was right after he was traded to the Yankees, and we started to prepare ourselves for 2024 numbers. And I like to do things before the season, kind of halfway through the season, and then now really preparing for what's coming in the winter in terms of projecting these players a little bit and seeing where their value lies. Juan Soto was the first player, even with Ohtani, who, you could put all the numbers in on Ohtani, but until we had a contract that was Ohtani's, the numbers were never going to get to $700 million for a player like that. Well, I'm not even using Shohei Ohtani to value Juan Soto. I'm using Aaron Judge, right? And I'm using Lindor and big time players with $300 million plus contracts. Bryce Harper, of course. I'm using players that have contracts that are substantial, but the math, not me, not logic, not finagling the numbers, the actual algorithm itself before the season spit out a contract that was north of $500 million in total value. It's the first time that our algorithm has ever done that for any sport ever. That's what Juan Soto was coming into the season with. And one of the big reasons that it's 500 plus is he's 25 years old. Okay. And generally speaking, Pete Alonso is 30, by the way. They're both going to free agency for the first time in 2 months, right? They're on the exact same career path, 5 years apart in age. So Juan Soto isn't just the top free agent because he's mashing balls out of Yankee Stadium and he's hitting near 300 and doing all the things he's been able to do for the past 6 seasons. He's the top free agent because he's 25, and we just don't see players of his caliber, of his age, get to the finish line like this. Well, we're about to. And what was barely over $500 million just a few months ago has now become a 14-year, $530 million projection in our system, which is about $38 million a year, which, isn't Aaron Judge's $40 million. It's not. Aaron Judge isn't signing a 14-year contract either. Okay. He got a year more than most people thought he would with New York, and that's what bidding wars will do. The 14-year contract is not something I just pull out of thin air. All right. The term that the algorithm gives us is based on the ages of all the other players who signed their contract and how long their contracts ended up being versus how old Juan Soto is and how long then should his contract be. So Bryce Harper, who was somewhere in the middle here, right? Upper 20s, got the 13-year contract. Lindor got the 11, 12, 13-year contract. We know where this is headed, guys. 25 years old. This is what the math tells us it should be. Do I want Juan Soto to sign a 14-year contract? Hell no. Okay. Hell no. Now, Boris is having some issues of late, getting exactly what he wants to fit into his window. But if I'm Juan Soto and I'm Scott Boris, and I know there's going to be, is the number 12, is that a fair number of teams that are going to be 100% in with a substantial bid on Juan Soto? I think that's probably right. If there's that much supply or demand, why do you need to go 14 years? You don't. We'll talk about this way more when we get down that road. But I'm explaining to you how the algorithm and the valuations have come about. This is obviously the breadwinner. This is the biggest valuation that our math has ever given us, and it has increased in value kind of heavily in just the past couple of months because of this really cliched, foreshadowed experience of Juan Soto being in Yankee Stadium. It's working just as they thought it would. Pete Alonso comes in second. Not the year any of us thought Pete Alonso was going to have, but it's still above average. He's still holding his weight to some degree. He's not going to be walking into the winter, carrying a gold bat with him. Let's put it that way, like Aaron Judge did before his free agency, and like Juan Soto appears to be doing before his. However, he's got plenty of resume to go with it, and we don't just look at what happened over the past couple of months in our math. It looks over a 2-year span. So for now, Pete's still at 7 for 200. little over $200 million. I know he wants more than 7 years. I know he wants this to get to 8 or 9. That's why the Mets and him haven't agreed to anything yet. But I can tell you right now, and we've done pieces on this and pods on this before, this first base stuff is real. We are not seeing players that are exclusively first basemen lock in even fair market value contracts. Now, Freeman was a little bit different. He was also the league MVP heading into free agency. So you could forgive the age and the position a little bit with him because for all intents, he was sort of dangling in that unicorn role when he went to the Dodgers and did what he did. There's certainly a world where somebody does that with Pete Alonso, that they may be one significant bat and, away. And oh, by the way, they need help at first base defensively. There's certainly a scenario where that happens. There's certainly a scenario where the Mets believe keeping him at fair market price, which is what I believe this number is just good for business. Brand, consistency, all those things. But I'm here to tell you, I think there's a very realistic chance that this is a smaller contract in every regard because of the position. Just one man's opinion. Corbin Burnes is the first pitcher on the board. The ace in Baltimore values to about 6 for 185 right now. So north of 30 million. We don't have a lot of these. All right. I'm not going to say the starting pitching stuff's been devalued, but it's not an accident that there are rule changes being proposed to force these guys to pitch 6 innings and all sorts of things. If you take your starting pitcher out, you lose your DH. All sorts of things are being floated. And it's not just, happenstance. It's things that are really starting to come to the drawing board because there's a lot of people that think that the game was better from a pitching standpoint 10, 15 years ago when the starting pitcher was much, much more prevalent. And there's a lot of people that think that at some point in time, very, very soon, starting pitcher money is going to come down. I'm here to tell you it probably already has. And we'll see what happens in that regard going forward this winter. But Corbin Burnes right now has a chance to be in that, upper echelon of starting pitching contracts. And 6 years may not be enough. If there's a bidding war, he gets into the 7-8 conversation, and then we're up well north of 200 million. So he's the breadwinner in that regard. Garrett Cole, this one's fun. He values to about 5 for 180. As of right now, he has 4 years remaining on his contract with the Yankees. However, if you remember or you recall, he's got a real fun opt-out clause in this contract right now after 2024. If he chooses to opt out, the Yankees can void the opt-out by adding another year at $36 million to the back end of this contract. So let's just assume that's exactly what's going to happen. Garrett Cole is going to opt out. The Yankees are going to block him from doing it. He will be left with 5 years and $180 million, which is exactly what our math says he's worth. So sometimes things work out that way. This is just one of those cases where dollar for dollar, Garrett Cole and the Yankees appear to be right at market value. Now, is there a world where the Yankees don't want to add an age 38 year to Garrett Cole? Sure. I don't think anybody wants to guarantee a player $36 million at age 38. I also think the Yankees know they're about to win near 100 games, probably win the AL East and be the AL favorites heading into October here for, what's been a nice little 3-year run for this team outside of getting bounced out of the playoffs. You don't give up on an ace for $36 million in the city of New York. You just don't. This front office will get crucified if you do something like this. He goes and signs somewhere else and you take steps back because you don't have the consistency that he has brought to this pitching staff for the past 5 seasons. So it's fun to think about all these scenarios playing out. It's kind of cool that the math and the numbers 100% align right now. But at the end of the day, it's just going to be an extra $36 million for Garrett Cole and at least a few more seasons of Garrett Cole as the ace of the Yankees until further notice. But he is certainly worth every dollar that's been handed out thus far, and I think that won't really stop anytime soon going forward. Here's the 5th name in the top 5 valuations for this upcoming winter. Willie Adames, the shortstop for the Brewers, a Brewers team that is just blowing the NL Central out of the water right now, by the way. 7 years, $175 million. It's a flat $25 million a year for this guy. Seems right about perfect for this position for a player who's not elite, right? He's not a massively power productive player, though he's got 20 plus home runs each of the past 4 seasons. He's going to have 90 plus RBIs again. He's going to have 150 hits again, right? He's batting over 250 this year. His OPS is approaching 800. He's doing everything you're asking of him. He's going to have a WAR near 2.5. So there's no question that the Brewers probably keep this guy around. They seem to not be slowing down in this division. I don't know why you would thwart one of your most important positions, defensively speaking, especially if you're getting this kind of production out of a guy who is just turned 28 years old or about to turn 28 years old in just a couple of days here. That's about as good as it gets. So flat $25 million a year on Willie Adames, which could get up to about 175 or even 200 million if things break right his way. There are so many more names, so many more valuations, so many more things to detail in this piece that I really spent a lot of time and effort with, not just mathematically, but also writing this analysis. And I had a lot of fun with it. And it's going to be a fluid piece as some moves are made or maybe some extensions are signed. I will try to keep up with the option decisions as those are finalized and make this sort of like a go-to guide, maybe a preamble into our winter so that we're all on the same page. We know what the big players are. We know what the numbers might look like. And at some point in time, we'll also build in the arbitration piece to this, right? So all the projected arbitration values. And at that point, we'll be able to go ahead to our 2025 rosters, build in some placeholders, understand where the tax thresholds are going to be, and really start to project out where every team stands from an off-season standpoint, financially speaking, because then we can start taking some players like Anthony Santander out of Baltimore and putting them in Seattle or putting them in San Francisco with some of these projected numbers and see how it all works out mathematically. And that's obviously the fun of a nice long Major League Baseball offseason that gives us time to do things like that. So let's start here. Visit Spotrac.com. Check out the valued 2025 MLB free agent piece. Of course, headlined by Juan Soto, who continues to be a major piece, though not the major piece for the Yankees. He is standing aside and letting Aaron Judge cook, a player that is just putting absurd numbers on the board on a daily basis. So I hate to give him too much credit, but the Yankees are 100% must-see TV right now, and that's just probably just exactly how baseball likes it. How about this for Major League Baseball on August 25th? The two best teams from a standings standpoint, the LA Dodgers and the New York Yankees, they have done their homework. They've done well. They're happy. Let's put it that way. Philadelphia is involved. Baltimore being involved is cool. These are certainly the two teams in the two cities that they need invested in October. And as of right now, it's looking pretty darn good. We will keep up with the NFL roster moves. I know Keith Smith is just going crazy with NBA offseason pieces and podcasts and all sorts of live streams and stuff like that. If you are not following at Keith Smith NBA on all the socials, you are not doing your job as an NBA fan, because he is working harder than probably anybody else in the NBA right now as they all vacation and give themselves some time off with the Olympics now done and the break before October kind of here. Not for Keith. So we'll have him back on soon to kind of wrap up what happened this offseason and get us ready for what's going to happen in the actual regular season. But he continues to write amazing pieces on Spotrac.com. Check those out as well. And like I said, there's some NBA or NFL headlines and storylines that are at a bit of a standstill, but I have a feeling within the next couple of days, some of those things will surface with some sort of resolution, whether it's financial resolutions or maybe even tradable resolutions. It all remains to be seen. For Scott, my name is Mike Ginnitti. Thanks for listening to this edition of the Spotrac Podcast.